Welcome back. We are continuing our discussion on Vietnamese American fishermen in the Gulf of Mexico who say they are now struggling to make a living 2 years after the explosion of the Deepwater Horizon and the BP oil spill. Joining us right now to talk about some of these challenges the Vietnamese American fishermen face is Vinh Ho with Boat People SOS. Thank you very much for joining us today. You were with us 2 years ago to talk about the oil spill case. Things have changed a little bit, but the impact is still felt, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And it's kind of saddens me to have to report that 2 years later you can really rerun the exact same program, and all of the issues that we had discussed are still relevant today. All the way from the claims facilities, different claims facilities now, to some of the lack of services that really need to be available to a lot of these fishermen. It's a vertically integrated economy that's based on fishing, shrimping, and it's been completely decimated all the way back to Katrina. And the minimal recovery that they were able to do over those 3 years until the oil spill happened in 2010 was just washed away. So the investment that was made is now lost.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the language issues that were addressed. That seems to be, from what I heard, at the crux of the class action lawsuit on the website right now. What are you hearing about language issues with BP?
The same language issues that we saw right after the oil spill, we are seeing now again with this new claims facility that has been set up by the, now administered by the courts. The language access has always been a problem because it's not accurate, it's not clear, and there's very little cultural sensitivity involved. And as you've mentioned on the prior piece, that the language here is quite different from the language in Vietnam. Hiring somebody to recognize that cultural sensitivity makes a very big difference within the community, especially if you're producing outreach materials and going on air to kind of talk about some of those issues.
What about the Texas shrimpers? We talked about the Louisiana shrimping fleet. That's where the lawsuit was filed. More than half of the fishing fleet. Not as large here, but you're saying pretty large and also very affected.
It's very large, and it's almost been forgotten. The media never covered many of the Vietnamese fishermen that operate out of here in Texas. A lot of these boats can travel hundreds of miles, sometimes thousands of miles, and so they fish shrimp in the same area. And a lot of the fishermen had relocated to Louisiana so they can get some of those services because Texas was not identified as a devastated area. And it's really unfortunate. And over the past 2 years, we've really done the best that we can to advocate for the Texans. And very little services have been able to be provided for them simply because of the lack of funding, resources, and the media's lack of coverage.
Now, BP had no comment when I reached out to them. What has your response from BP been? How have they responded to Vietnamese American concerns?
I think they have largely forgotten that this community exists. They almost not want to include them in the discussions. We've had talks over the past 2 years with BP officials. The ironic thing is a lot of these claims facilities rely on our offices in the Gulf Coast area to do much of the work that the adjusters are supposed to do, including reaching out to the community. A lot of language, proper language translations have to be done by our offices. And then when they reach an impasse with the claimants, they send them to our offices, and we receive no funding to provide these services.
But you're saying the resources are there for BP to find people who speak
absolutely.
the language through your offices.
Absolutely, and if they could work with a lot of the nonprofits, not just us, but a lot of the nonprofits that serve that area, certainly we can ameliorate some of those effects.
All right, very good. Thank you, Vinh Ho with Boat People SOS. Real quick, what has the mental health been like? We're running out of time, but if you had to put it in a nutshell, what's the mental health like?
The increases of incidents of domestic violence, depression have progressively been worse. A lot of these fishermen are very proud, very self-sufficient, and now they're not able to support themselves, their families. They've been pushed into a corner, and they really are trying to figure out a way out. And mental health has been a big push for us, and to try to find funding not only from BP, but from the government as well.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for joining us on Visions this morning. Well, a new study finds Asian Americans value work, family, and are wealthier than other Americans as a whole. But do these findings reinforce the model minority stereotype? We're going to explore that issue when Visions returns.